español. Los motivos, la energía, pero enseguida nos lo desgrana nuestro siguiente invitado, es Andrew Kenningham, es economista jefe de Capital Economics. Andrew, thank you so much for having us a few minutes. Good afternoon from Spain.
Afternoon.
Andrew, at a time when we are beginning to see declines in inflation, the ECB has not yet dared to claim victory. How far could inflationary declines in Europe go?
Well, I think the headline inflation rate might come down quite substantially this year. It's over 9% now. It could well be 3 or 4% by the end of the year. But the problem is that the ECB is going to focus on the core rate, so excluding energy in particular, as well as food and a few other things. And that core rate, which is now around just over 5%, will probably also come down, but not fast enough. So that's why policymakers at the ECB, like their counterparts in other countries, are talking about staying the course and keeping interest rates relatively high for quite some time to bring down the core rate rather than just relying on the energy prices washing out.
If we talk about Spain, do you think is it possible to see inflation at 2% this 2023?
Yes, I mean, I think it is possible. Spain is interesting because the pass-through of wholesale energy prices to the retail price, at least as it's measured by the statistics office, is particularly quick. It's partly because of the dynamic market model that you have with energy prices. Partly, perhaps, also because of the way they measure it. But energy inflation rose earlier in Spain to very high levels last year, and as a result of that, the year-on-year change in energy prices is going to be sharply negative. It's already negative in the December numbers. It will be a lot more negative by the middle of this year. So just because of those statistical effects, what we call base effects, I think energy inflation will be so negative it will drag down the headline rate close to 2%. It could even be 2% by sort of May, June time. It might then go up a bit later in the year or next year. But yes, I think the headline rate will come down particularly quickly in Spain.
Do you think that these declines in energy prices in Spain are consistent enough?
I'm not sure about consistent. I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but I understand that there is an issue over the way that the retail energy prices are measured, and that a lot of people are not paying the regulated price, which is lower than the market price of the contracts that they're on. So it may well be that the experience of people is not that they see prices coming down as much as it's being recorded. But yeah, I think energy inflation will come down. I think the same thing will happen throughout Europe. The inflation rate, obviously, that's the measure of the change from over a 12-month period. And so if energy prices don't come down, then but are stable, then the inflation rate will come down, even in that case. As it happens, wholesale energy prices have collapsed. So it's highly likely that measured energy inflation will turn negative in all of the European countries. It will happen a bit quicker in Spain.
What do you expect for Spanish core inflation?
Well, that's harder to judge, I think. It's another interesting feature of Spain's inflation rate is that the core rate measured on the harmonized measure that the Eurozone use, and the Eurostat measure, has actually been coming down for a while now. So it looks as if it might be past its peak. Now, one interpretation of that is that Spain may have a little bit less of an underlying inflation problem than, say, Germany and other northern European countries, which reflects the fact that the Spanish economy hasn't recovered as fully from the pandemic as northern European countries. The GDP is still below its pre-pandemic level, and the unemployment rate, although it's fallen, is still well above its all-time lows during the Eurozone era. So there may be a bit more spare capacity in Spain. That would be one possibility, but it's equally possible that there actually are measurement issues with the core inflation rate as well. And you may be aware that the alternative measure, the CPI measure, which is the national measure of inflation, actually has core inflation quite a lot higher, and it hasn't been falling on that basis. So it's tricky to interpret that, especially with from a distance and not looking at all the details terribly closely. But I think there's a reasonable case to make that core inflation will come down gradually in Spain, as it will do elsewhere in the Eurozone, and that will contribute to a decline in the headline rate. But the moves in the core inflation, I mean, they don't necessarily matter that much for Spain, because the point of the core measure is that it influences monetary policy. And when the ECB is setting monetary policy for the entire Eurozone, for all 20 countries that are now in it, they won't be influenced much by a slight change or a slightly lower core inflation in Spain or any other one individual country. The problem there is at the Eurozone level, it's pretty high, and it doesn't look like it'll come down quickly.
It's tricky, as you say. Andrew, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and have a nice weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much for asking me.
Nos quedamos, por tanto, con ese análisis. Andrew Kenningham, desde Capital Economics, que nos decía que efectivamente